Now, if you have not heard this, or if this does come as news to you, or if this sounds to you like a provocation, an outrageous statement, it is because the press across the board reported those findings the opposite way. The headlines all said, recount shows Bush won. Recount shows the Supreme Court didn't change the outcome. Well, headline after headline. Even in the news organs published by those outfits that helped count the votes. So we're dealing with a kind of Orwellian moment here. Now, if you read the New York Times coverage past the headline, which basically said, yeah, Bush won, and read all the way to the end of the article, the last paragraph, say, on the jump page, you'd find a kind of quiet, kind of whispered mention of the fact that actually, if they counted all the votes in Florida, Al Gore won. What was that? Nothing. Now, privately, editors at these papers have said to people who asked them, why did you report this way? The answer they gave was, well, we're at war with terror, you know, state of war now, so, you know, the responsible thing to do was really not, you know, make people lose confidence in their leadership or whatever. I mean, I leave it to you to ask yourselves if you think that's a good thing to do, to protect us from the knowledge that the wrong guy was in the White House. But the fact is, see, my main emphasis here is on the fact that a crucial datum, a crucial truth about the 2000 election was suppressed. How many of you saw the HBO movie Recount? Oh man, I thought it had better ratings than that. It won an Emmy. That didn't help, okay. Vermonters are not impressed by Emmys. Am I right? Or about TVs. Oh yeah, right, that too, yeah. Okay. Well, at any rate, Recount is an Emmy award-winning TV movie, which nobody's seen, offers the following view of the election in Florida, that it was a brawl after Election Day conducted by two parties, one of which was more ruthless than the other, and the more ruthless party won. Actually, what happened was much more complicated than that, and the press has not really paid any attention to that either. That prior to the election in 2000, Jeb Bush's office in Florida, together with Catherine Harris, the Secretary of State, deliberately used lists of felons' names to scrub voters from the rolls. About 50,000 voters' names were scrubbed illegally. You may remember that there were problems with the Chads, the hanging Chads. This should all come back to you. And we remember the images of people scrutinizing these pieces of cardboard laboriously as if they were trying to decipher scraps of the Talmud, you know, right? Just as looking at this, trying to figure this out. And this, you know, this was a very troubling spectacle that we all saw. A couple of years ago, Dan Rather reported for HDTV, which is where he went after CBS, that actually the authorities in South Florida had knowingly used the wrong kind of paper in the machines. They were warned, if you use this kind of paper, the Chads won't poke through, and the authorities said, get lost, you know, we're not interested. So it appears that they deliberately used the wrong kind of paper in order to create kind of a crisis with the votes. This then was used to justify the passage of the Help America Vote Act, because the argument put forward, the spin that was placed on the spectacle of people sort of Talmudically studying the cardboard, see, was that it proved that paper was the problem. The paper ballots were the problem. And the solution to the problem of paper ballots was naturally to computerize voting. So this led to the passage of the Help America Vote Act in 2002, and that legislation mandated the use of electronic voting systems nationwide, and that's what you have in Vermont now. In 103 towns in this state, populations of 2,000 or more, you're using Diebold optical scanners okay, which is something we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. Now, this reform of the voting system only made the problems much, much worse. And this brings us to the 2004 election. Now, I'm sure that many of you think the 2000 election was decided improperly by an interfering Supreme Court that stopped the vote count and took a victory away from the Democrats. What many of you undoubtedly don't know is that there's even more evidence that the 2004 election was stolen. And I'm going to hold up the smoking gun, which I am confident you've never seen or heard of. This is a book called Witness to a Crime by a man named Richard Hayes Phillips with 2 L's. This is an audit of the election in Ohio. It took 3 years. Phillips and his researchers spent 3 years literally scrutinizing every single ballot that was cast in 18 counties in Ohio. 3 years. They studied all the ballots, they studied all the polling books, they studied every piece of paper that was there in these warehouses. And they discovered thousands and thousands of ballots that had been variously altered, mutilated, changed, depriving John Kerry of 200,000 votes just in those 18 counties. Now, Bush won Ohio, we're told, by 118,000 votes. So Kerry was deprived of 200,000 just in those 18 counties, and it's richly illustrated and also has in it a CD so that you can see for yourself examples of what they did. Picture after picture after picture. For example, on the cover, a ballot on which someone had darkened in the square next to Kerry Edwards. Someone else had put a paper sticker over it and then darkened in the square next to Bush Cheney, so that in the optical scanner it would read as a Bush Cheney vote. Thousands of ballots that had been pre-marked so that another candidate, like a third-party candidate, was chosen as president, so that people picking up the ballot and voting for Kerry would have submitted what we call an overvote. 2 votes for president, that's it. Invalid, spoiled, no good. Now, it's amazing enough that Phillips found all this evidence of fraud, deliberate, systematic election fraud in Ohio. Even more amazing, I suppose, is the fact that after he had finished his study, the boards of elections in 55 counties in Ohio, there are 86 in all, the boards of elections in 55 counties, in direct defiance of a court order, destroyed part or all of the ballots in their possession. They destroyed 1.58 million ballots, which is a destruction of evidence. Pretty amazing. And if it had happened in any other country, we would say this is the worst kind of corruption, this is criminal, this is gangsterism, and so on. The important point here is that none of you has heard of this book, okay? The book was supposed to be published by the Kent State University Press. It was under contract. They praised it. They thought it was really good. And it is a remarkably thorough, precise, persuasive, complete, and beautifully written book, which I recommend highly. But suddenly they said, you know something, this book's way too long, it has to be cut back, and we can't afford the illustrations. Phillips said, without the illustrations, it's not convincing. You need the illustrations. They said, well, we're sorry, we can't do it. It's got to be half as long, no illustrations. So he said, I'll publish it myself. That's why it looks like this. It looks a little plain. It looks kind of like a Soviet book. Do you know what I mean? And of course, when you self-publish, it's like putting on a sandwich board that says, I am a lunatic. Do you know what I mean? Self-published. Oh, great. This is a self-published book. Uh-oh. It's not really funny. I mean, it is funny, but it's not, because he put his life savings into it. And it's sold to date 900 copies.